Hi, welcome to another. Welcome to another episode of Seattle House Mafia's Industry Interviews. I am Phil, your host, and today's guest is a Pacific Northwest native and an electronic producer, performer, and musician with decades of experience focusing on immersive live performances, DJing, and releasing experimental styles of dance music. He started his underground journey in the late 90s, initially producing and performing psytrance via Live PA. As a co-founder of Immersion XR and Triangularis, he's pioneered nightlife visuals around Seattle and worked with some amazing artists on many unique projects. He has recent releases on Global Dance Records, which is our boy Sangdo's label, Uniting Souls, Romero, Munchies After Dark, Tony H., right? Fair One, and most recently a full-length album on Chris Offutt's label, Sage Rights, and has just kicked off a new night in White Center at the Lumberyard with Romero from Uniting Souls and Blue Tech called Machine Learning. Please welcome Ian Phillips, a.k.a. Drawbird. How are you, man?
I'm good.
Good. God, that's quite an intro.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of stuff.
I promise I didn't write that.
You didn't write it. You gave me a few, but I do my thing. One of the things I was thinking about this today, like I don't know how many of these shows you watch, but I try to blend kind of these down memory lane conversations versus like somebody like you who I've never talked to. I mean, we literally met 2 nights ago, right? I've never met you in person. I think we've communicated a little bit on email. So it's almost as fun as doing these nostalgic conversations to talk to somebody that I really don't know, but I know you know a lot of people that I know.
Yeah.
And I don't have like experiences to share besides meeting you at Lumberyard on your recent night, and just hanging out with you, my wife, some buddies, and doing that thing.
That's one of my favorite things, right? I keep running into people who are like, "Oh, I've been raving in Seattle since the '90s." I'm like, "You go to this place? You go to that place?" They're like, "Yeah, that's the trip down memory lane right there."
Totally.
Talking about the old warehouses that have been shut down.
Yeah. So, well, before we jump off the Lumberyard thing, like, tell me about the concept behind that. How did that come about?
Well, that's like a culmination of a plan that really started off and existed really with Future Function, which was a synthwave night that was running monthly for a long time. And that was something that Austin Robertson kicked off a long time ago, and I joined on the second one, and with Tyler and Sylvan, and we had this group doing mostly, we called it synthwave music, but we didn't really play a lot of synthwave, because synthwave doesn't do well in clubs, right? It's not enough bass, not enough dance, not enough rhythm, but it's synthwave adjacent. It's basically synthwave, but a little more dancey. And it did a lot of that, and starting off Immersion there was like, how do we do a night we can also control our own visuals? Test some stuff, we've got all this gear, we want to try some new projects out, see how it works. And hosting night was that, and I'd had a lot of experience running nights since back in early 2000s, so I was like, all right, we can do this. And Machine Learning was from Triangularis, which is with Blue Tech and myself. We wanted to do something that would do that idea again. Test out some of our visuals, but also let us play something else, right? We want to play something different. We don't want to fit into any other mold. Like, both of us play kind of borderline IDM stuff, way too progressive, way too riffy, way too whatever, and we want to go all over the board, so we just like, we'll just do our own thing. We'll make it pretty, we'll throw our visuals in, and we'll try and play a little bit different. So, I mean, my first went from a little bit of, I would say, like organic house to 185 BPM IDM breaks.
Okay.
And just going all over the board with it. That's a lot of the experimentation there. And then mix that with some cutting edge visuals that we have access to, and then put it in a place where we all live, which is the west side over here, where we don't have a lot of other events. And that is something that we really feel strongly about. And definitely feels like we got something special there, just kicking off the second one, and looking forward to the third. Dude, I
think so. I mean, the visuals were dope. Like I told you, my wife is the and the music was good too, obviously. Like, I really dug the music. I didn't hear your set. I heard Blue Tech and I heard Romero, so I'm assuming you were on point as well. But really good music, and my wife is the visual artist out of the couple. I have like the visual acuity of like a 12-year-old, but I could really appreciate it. Like, it was cool. Lighting was great. Visuals were cool. Sound was good. There's some turbo sound in there. Like,
yeah, it's nice to have a good system. We looked at a lot of venues on the west side.
Did you really?
All up and down West Seattle. We even looked at the Cleaners. Have you seen the Cleaners over in Admiral?
No.
That old Cleaners building.
The one that's dead now.
Yeah, you know why it's dead?
No, I want to hear.
Okay.
Fill me in.
It is a hazmat zone. Like, it is a no-go, you will die area, because apparently all the chemicals are still leaking into the ground, so no one wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So it's just sitting there empty, corner spot, big glass, awesome building. No one can use it for anything.
So I drove by there in the summertime, and I actually took several pictures, and I sent them to these guys saying, how would it be if we had a Seattle House Mafia HQ in that building? That building's dope, right? Like,
we tried to get someone to invest in it as a club, and they're like, yeah, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah. It's double, it's like 2 stories high, and that front room is open. It would be
it's awesome.
A beautiful like venue / office shared workspace. And Archie McPhee's used to be down just a little bit. I think it's still associated with the building. Like there was there's some residential there. That's such a cool building.
Yeah,
it's too bad.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That's kind of the story with a lot of those old cleaners from like the early days, the 40s and the 50s. Is I think they were pumping chemicals into the ground and just like there's the laws
just
were
leaving them there. And
it's
just like your old classic. Don't mix your ammonia with your bleach.
I didn't know that's why that place went away. That's too bad.
No, it's a shame. And like all the real estate people I've talked to are like, yeah, we're not buying that. It takes so much. Just dig all the ground out and replace it with new ground. Just like, no, that's good.
And that building's just probably got to go, and then they got to do
we'll just have to hang out at the Benbow until then, right?
Yeah, totally, totally. So let's just close the loop on the lumber yard. So you guys looked all around West Seattle, White Center. You settled on this place, and I think that neighborhood's banging now. Like there's restaurants, there's bars, there's like. And I love not having to drive. I mean, I can get to the Monkey in like 7 minutes, but I still got to go over West Seattle Bridge and all that. Yeah. Like my wife and I just drove up the street. It was just so cool to be able to like be in the neighborhood.
Yep. Yeah. No, it just feels good there too. And there's a couple more spaces that are opening up there soon. Which you can't tell the names of yet until they're ready to announce them. But there, you see people walking around on the weekends. It's hopping. It's going well. Yeah. So it feels like a great place to hang out.
It's lively. In fact, we started doing dinner. We try to go either to like Columbia City or up to White Center and just like explore, because there's so many restaurants and stuff happening up there. So I love that you guys are doing that up there. It's very cool. Well, let's jump back into where this all started for you. I know in the intro, kind of in the 90s, you grew up down south a little bit, right?
Yep. Okay. Yep. Olympia kid.
Got it.
Went to Capital High School. I spent my time there. I know. Spent a year in Germany, late 90s, 96, 97, right? So exchange student program.
How old were you then?
16. So yeah.
So you got a taste of like the grunge stuff happening too. Yeah, big time.
I actually got to see several pretty amazing bands at the Capitol backstage. If you know the place, they had that big Capitol Theater, right? They did all the shows, has all the seats, but then at night they would just shut the blinds and let people into the backstage and have these grunge shows, rock shows on the stage, but everybody would hang out on the backstage, which had all the like creepy, sketchy, like side alcoves that you climb to, right, where they'd hang lights from and stuff. It was definitely not safe. Like, but they would throw all the shows out. I saw Presidency of the United States. I saw Pearl Jam. I saw a bunch of awesome groups back then. It was just pretty amazing.
It's almost cliche, but I always talk about how there was a time where I was able to like go see a grunge show in a small bar and then go out to the electronic thing the next night and then close out that night on Saturday at the rave. And it was just like musically, if people weren't here in the 90s, like they just, I can't describe how crazy and fun it was and how open and, down south. I mean, like you said, you saw Pearl Jam.
After I came back from Germany in 97 and we started doing more electronic music, and it didn't start that way, right? 98, I had a rock band. It's called Ragnarok. Of course, Vikings and stuff. And all of us, and my bassist and my drummer were like, "Oh, we don't really want to play yet." So they didn't want to enter the battle of the bands. So I'm like, "Why not?" And they're like, "Oh, we just don't feel comfortable on stage." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." I thought the band was great. I thought they killed it. They were awesome, but they were just too shy for it. So I'm like, "All right, fine, screw you." I got a drum machine. I got 2 other friends who played keyboards, and we wrote an entirely new thing and submitted for the Battle of the Bands in '98, and got admitted as the only electronic group whatsoever. And then we added a person to the band who did lights. Nice. Couldn't play an instrument to save his life. but he could flip switches really well.
He could time switches.
Exactly. So we brought in our own lights for this backup stage. None of the rock bands used the light. We played against like a rock band and a ska band and a bunch of stuff like that. Ska band called the Jerks. Funny story there, but they came in, they play, and we're like closed out the night with our like electronic live set and like custom lighting. And actually, while we're setting up, we blew a breaker in the Capitol backstage. So again, sketchy place, people in the rafters and stuff, and then the power goes out. It was like, uh-oh, this is really bad. They got the power back on the stage first, so we cranked all our lights up and just started playing.
Nice.
It was rad, and it looked like we meant to do it.
Really? like so the whole place went like dark.
Totally dark.
And then it was just you guys on the stage.
Just us on the stage with the lights up. And that was 98. Like, people weren't doing crazy light shows in a back room like that. So that was our first like real immersive light show, and it was crazy how the reaction came to it. We're like, yeah, we can't get enough of that. We're going to keep doing that always.
So who won that Battle of the Bands?
We did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
You guys won.
Oh, yeah.
And
totally.
It was probably like the lights helped
Oh,
that,
absolutely.
That whole
I
layer.
think so.
Yeah.
That, and like one of our members did like a really raunchy haiku halfway through, and that was pretty funny.
Awesome. So in the Battle of the Bands, how long do you guys do? Like, is it like a set? Like
yeah, it's like a 35-minute set of tunes
fun,
that we played,
man.
like right at the very end.
And did your old bandmates, were they mad that they missed the bus on that?
You know, they didn't want to talk about it, so probably.
Yeah.
They probably were. We got a whole bunch of bookings after that. We had like a residency at the Matrix Coffee House in Chehalis. Which is a killer place. We go down there and play every Sunday for like the next year or so.
Was it like a nighttime thing at the coffee house, or was
No, it was like an afternoon thing. It's afternoon
best.
on Sundays. We'd go in on 3 and we'd play until 9, and then we'd just hang out. Right at this
That's perfect.
It's called a coffee house, but they had food and sandwiches.
Yeah.
It was huge space, really nice stage, good sound. Like, it was fun.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's the South End experience, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
And so that was like in the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We would drive up to Seattle to go to raves and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, we went to NAF and Studio B, which then became Club FX, or was it the other way around? I can't remember.
And now is it a strip club?
No, it's gone. That's the F5 building.
Oh, the F5. Okay, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Right.
Smash that down, put office buildings.
That's right. That's right.
A lot of those, right?
Yes. I did go to Club FX. Now that you're bringing it back, I got that confused with whatever that building is near the Monkey.
Yeah, I forget, because it was an old like Harbor Dockmaster building or something like that. So it had the huge parking lot. It was right on the water, and it was just not in good shape.
Yeah.
Creepy building. But it had like 3 stages.
Yeah.
They'd pack that place out on the weekends. So I'd go in there and hang out with the DJs and convince some of the ones who were visiting to come play my weekly the following Wednesday.
Nice.
You know, feed them at a Japanese restaurant called the N in Belltown, which was great.
Yep.
You know, we had a lot of good shows back then and a lot of fun.
It's fun. So you're local, and you've been local for a long time. So you've seen a lot of changes, like I have, right here. This is especially Belltown. Belltown, like it's been like these cycles of swanky and then just completely dirty and then swanky again. I feel like right now it's like kind of on the, maybe they'll come back up when everybody from Amazon is now coming into the office. They'll try and clean it up again, but we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, it's kind of a teetering a little bit there, right? Like I think it waxes and wanes with the I don't know. There should be a name for that location where the Foundation used to be, that Sarajevo is now, right?
Yeah.
Like that spot down there, which was Medusa, and then it was Venom, and then it was
Volume, and then Foundation.
Like every single one of those places got shut down for something illegal. Like, it's just not a good spot.
Yeah, I'll tell you one funny story. I don't know if I ever said this on air before, but I was working down there, and I heard rumors that this nightclub was opening.
Yeah.
The Super Club, right? A Super Club. It was Seattle's first Super Club. That's how it was being pitched. Like, it was in like The Stranger and all this stuff, talking about the first Seattle Super Club. And, there's a lot of controversy around whatever. And I made a mix CD with kind of a Super Club in mind, what I thought would be. Right. And I walked on lunch. I walked down to that place. Just kind of walked in. There was, you could hear skill saws and hammers, and like they were building out the inside. Mm. And I just came in, introduced myself, and said, "Hey, I'm a local DJ. Would love to play here. Would love to, hand this off to whoever's sort of coordinating talent." and whatever. And I gave it to this guy who had a tool belt on and a tank top and all sweaty. He's like, yeah, I'm the manager. Thanks. And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Nice.
Never thought much of it. He emailed me. I got booked there. Sangdo came on board there. So we were residents at Medusa for a couple of years, I think, when I was running. It was super fun. Yeah.
I'll bet.
And that was a wild time.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah,
I think most of my shows were all psytrance around that time. So I was playing at like Electric Tea Garden.
Yes.
And we did get some. Like I got to play at the same show as Astral Projection when they brought him to Studio B, which was crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Like old school Goa. And, some of those venues were just wild. I had to play at NAF when Deep Sky played.
Yeah.
If you remember that, that was nuts. Yeah. But then, there were some other
I went
ones
to that
were
party.
hilarious.
Yeah.
That one was good. We were playing in the outside stage.
Yep.
Which I think was like that little creepy tent on the side.
Totally.
Like
I played at the creepy tent before. For sure.
That was great. I'm just like, there's a few people out here. It's really cold.
Yeah.
We got computers. We're just gonna put our hands over the CRT monitors and be like, "This is great."
I love that you got to play NAF too, because again, another like institution that if you're not from here and you didn't get experience it,
you didn't know about it. You didn't know about it, right?
Yeah. And so, where did the name Drawbird come from?
So that was I've had a few like random gamer tag call signs over the years, and I had this like theory that you could always come up with a new one that was catchy, that sounded good if you just took two regular words like a verb and a noun and you just smash them together. So I had a whole collection of these. Like one of my other favorites that wouldn't make a good artist name was Trollbag. I used that one a lot too. I basically got every version of, or every spelling of Trollbag banned on AOL just because of my own use of it, like inappropriately back in the 90s. But Drawbird was one of those, and it was just one of the ones that I still liked. I thought it still sounded kind of catchy, sounded nice. It felt like a word I could identify with, say easily, and it's easy to say and remember. And I like birds. And some people say I look like a bird.
Do they? You're like what kind of bird?
I don't know, probably a chicken.
I was gonna say ostrich. You're pretty tall.
True, that's true. Yeah, if I crouch down though, I'll probably go into chicken.
Maybe chicken. Yeah, I can see that too.
Plus, those roosters are mean.
They are mean.
I had a neighbor behind me with a rooster. Is always killing possums out back. I was just like, whoa.
Dude, they're dinosaurs, man.
I know.
They're savage. You watch a rooster attack a mouse.
Oh, it's a stealth kill too. That rooster's just like, I know where your eyes are. Bam! Like, nope. That possum did not have a chance.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, well, no, I like the name too, and I think it's like neutral enough, and it doesn't feel arrogant. It's a good name. I think you did a good job.
Sounds fun too, right?
Yeah, sounds fun. Sounds
creative.
I
don't need anything that's like trying to tell you what to think either. Like
for sure,
art's art. You gotta enjoy it.
So you started off at kind of doing psytrance. I mean, what I checked out at Lumberyard, for instance, was, house BPM, but like a little like you were saying, you said IDM, which I will bet you the kids don't know what that even means these days.
Oh no,
right?
It doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, even the people who coined the term are like, that's stupid. It doesn't make any sense.
Because the I was for intelligent dance music, right?
Intelligent dance. Or you could go with that other joke name for it, which I think was an absolute joke. It was like brain dance. No one wants to call it that. No one wants to call it that. It was like an Aphex Twin quote, and I'm like, he's messing with everybody.
Yeah,
he's
definitely.
I'm sure he's disowned it completely. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the idea. It's like IDM is more just like the counter to EDM.
Yeah.
In my mind, anyways. It's just like, how do we make whatever we're doing, dance music wise, a little bit more interesting?
Yeah.
And then if you start looking at it from that perspective, you find there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it just like slips in other stuff.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm listening to this like generic-y kind of poundy electro house track or whatever. And then you've got this other one, this like random thing that comes in. You've got a garage artist mixing stuff with choir things, and you're like, okay, yeah, Bicep's pretty dope.
Yeah.
And that's IDM. I would absolutely call that IDM.
Right.
But people kind of mix it in. Well, it's house. Well, it's not house. You hear that all over the place, but people don't play as it often because it's harder to mix.
Right.
They're going all over the place with stuff, and they're like, the riffs don't always line up, and it's hard to keep a vibe with people sometimes because they're like, oh, it's more bass than I expected, and the drum kind of drops out. But that's to me, that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
Like, I love that little bit of interest, little bit of like, heady lack of expectation. Like,
right.
You shouldn't know exactly what's coming.
Yeah, I have lots of opinions about, I know what I like and what I don't like, and I don't produce, but I have lots of opinions about just sort of the fast food nature of like the bigger EDM, the bigger festival EDM, and it's just a little epic, a little cheesy, it's just not really my thing, you know?
Right.
And I mean,
It was my thing in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
I fucking loved it back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still kind of have a soft spot for it. I can't say there's anything that I don't like a little bit of, right?
Right.
Except maybe country music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically everything else. Basically everything else.
Yeah, I'm not a new country guy necessarily. I like some old vintage country, but yeah.
It's really easy to mix, though. I'll tell you that.
Is it?
It's all the same key.
Is that right? I didn't even know that.
I mean, you just like pitch it, and it's like, oh, these key changes are perfect. This is super simple.
Funny. So you produce So the other thing you mentioned was live PA, and again, for people that don't fully understand what that is, that's.
I don't think anyone uses the term anymore.
I don't think so either. Yeah. I saw, Smith and Mighty play live a few times. They were like the first live PA I saw, which was just this wall of gear that they had.
Totally.
And it sounded like house music, basically, like stripped down version of house music was it? But yeah, the term live PA is kind of a vintage term, but yeah.
I mean, it was the thing too. Is like you see artists like Rabbit in the Moon and stuff like
Saw
that.
them.
And you get them come play, and I mean, Bunny's great, dude. Like we drove him back and forth whenever he'd come to Tacoma, right?
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
Yeah, he's cool, super chill guy.
Yeah.
And they would play in Tacoma, and we bring him up and take him to the Rusty Pelican.
Yeah.
In Wallingford.
Yeah.
That's where we always had breakfast. It was cool.
Hell yeah.
But that was like their live stuff was amazing.
So
Crystal
cool.
Method's live stuff was amazing. Like
Agreed.
they really knew what they were doing with that stuff, and that's kind of where I was at with it. Like I was just doing because I started doing the live electronic music, and that was literally like me with a DOS computer, running a tracker program for all the rhythms, and then a couple synthesizers, and then two guys playing keyboard, and then a lighting guy. So it was we're doing it manually, right? We're not syncing this stuff up, and then moving on to the live PA, it's like, oh, I can use the computer to control all this stuff. So now I can be my own little 4-man band and switch it all around and just bring the gear and set the gear up and do that. That started to get real hard when you're trying to take it to festivals, or you're playing in the middle of a train tunnel and the stalactites are dripping on the monitor and you're like, cover it up. But it was a blast. But then you have total control over it. You do whatever you want, all original stuff, and it's just so much fun to play like that.
Is it fairly rehearsed when you were doing that, or is it these kind of So like 100% rehearsed, or like 90%, and then sometimes whatever happens kind of thing?
Well, so I say rehearsed, meaning I'd practiced.
Yeah,
but it was all like I'm changing everything. Like
when you're out live.
Oh yeah, like adding, removing beats.
That's what I wanted to know.
Mixing it across. I had to manually sync it because I used two computers.
Yep.
And
old school. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I tried to use the SMPTE timing, but I could never get it to work right. So I'd just be manually mapping with the space bar, and I would just like start and stop the space bar until I got it just right, and then I'd fade across with my own 16-track mixer that I was running everything through. It was a definitely like low tech version of that kind of thing. But then I had a setup too where I could control like all the synthesizers. So I built my own. I basically took an Oxygenate, if you remember it.
Yeah.
Ripped it open, and I wired up all the knobs and the buttons to like industrial equipment.
Okay.
So I had like levers that I would pull. It would switch the 303 sounds and be like wow, wow, and just do that. I had a joystick for controlling vocal patterns. And
God damn, that's cool though.
It makes a performance, right? It's fun. I got a control over everything. I can switch it was like having a really, really cool looking MIDI controller.
It seems more fun to watch than somebody on CDJs. For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm going to do again eventually. I just haven't got myself back to it, right? I back in the day when I was doing the live PA, I was definitely a, jerky little 20-something-year-old about it. And I was like, why you play other people's music and stuff like that?
Right.
Making fun of the DJs and whatnot, not really getting it or anything. And then at some point, I got over myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go do this DJ thing. And I'm like, this makes sense. Then you realize people are just there to have a good time anyways. They don't really care if you're playing it or something else. That's the point. You're having fun. You're at a show. It's like, why you got to be stuck up about it? You don't. Basically,
I think one way or another we all went. If we've been doing music long enough, whether DJing, producing, performing, however, we've all gone through that journey where it's like that arrogance, that entitlement, and they're like, wait a second. I'm here to keep the vibe and to help people have fun.
Start realizing there's no right or wrong way. People are having fun and you're having fun.
Yeah.
That's probably the right way.
It's probably the right way. The venue's making money. Like, that's probably the right way.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. Yeah. Got to win.
Yep.
Everybody's got to win.
And then you took a hiatus, right? For a minute.
Yeah. So, a lot of that psytrance stuff, people didn't know how to not lose money. and not lose lots of money.
Right.
And usually the first people to get cut are the support artists or the other artists that have been booked. So I played a lot of shows where I was well in the hole on.
Is that right?
Yeah. I had gear break. I'd have stuff fall apart. And I couldn't replace it. Couldn't afford to replace it. So I was like, I got to go get a jobby job.
Gotcha.
So I did and went back to school, got a job, joined a thing, got bullied into being a manager for a call center. They're like, this manager will be your manager if you're not the manager. I'm like, all right, I'm going to take the job. And did that for a long time.
Yeah.
Still writing music in the background, just not releasing a lot of it, right? And still occasionally play the shows, things like that, but just hid for a lot and did the tech life. And kind of just a little bit before the pandemic, I'm like soul searching, and I'm like, I gotta start putting out music and playing a lot more again. So I decided on what I guess some people might call melodic techno progressive house, but I really call like psy-influenced IDM house. Because it still has a little bit of my psy-trancey stuff in it. They're all really long tracks. They go across a thing. They don't really repeat themes too often. They build on themselves, and they're a little more complicated, and also that makes them harder to like play at a club because you got to pick sections because they're complicated. But started releasing those, and the first one was self-release, second one was with Sangdo on Global Dance Records.
Nice.
And that went super well.
Good.
Released a few more of those, started playing a lot more shows, started mixing the visuals in with it again so that we could do visuals tied to the music, do these shows, and that just brought it all back to me. So spent a lot more time focusing on it. Be like, how do I do this more?
Yeah.
Anything that lets me do it more, that's a win.
So taking that time off, because it was a few years, right? Like,
actually,
a few years from really pushing into it, right? You were still doing music in the background. Like,
totally.
It's hard to leave it, but
I mean, I've got decades of stuff that I've not released. And
totally.
Some of it I've finished, and some of it I've not, and some of it I've played, and occasionally you hear stuff come back, and we like, a couple of the tracks on the album I just released, like one of them I wrote in the '90s. I just didn't release it.
That's killer.
I'm like, I just got to remix this. I just did the mix again. I'm like, yeah, this still sounds pretty fresh.
Did you come back from that hiatus with like a new perspective, a little more mature? You worked a real job, like.
Oh yeah.
What was the if you were to like wrap it up, like what was the new perspective coming back in the scene and getting busy again?
We've touched upon it a little already. Yeah. It's one. I don't need to worry about DJing. DJs are great. DJs do the thing. I can be a DJ too. I can write music. I can play my own music as a DJ. Like, well, why wouldn't I just do that? There's nothing that keeps me from that. And a lot of the reasons it was hard to get bookings as a live act too is like that stuff's more expensive. It's harder to do. It's a lot more work. Like doing the DJ thing, it's like, I can test out tracks. I can play things, and I can still write in the background and stop.
Come in with a USB.
Yeah, and then I've got a lot of the work I did was like director marketing, go to market, program management, project management. I did a lot of that stuff, and that gave me a kind of business practical mind, right? Doing things more pragmatically rather than like I'm sitting and I'm writing tunes for 3 months and doing nothing with them.
Right.
Like it's fun, it's great, but it's like I could actually mix this so that I can also do more of it. Right?
Yeah.
Something that gets me to that next step. So all that maturity, I think, what it was, and then playing a couple shows as a DJ, being like, this is great. Okay, I want to do this more and mix it with the visuals. I want to make something different and show that stuff off. And so coming back at it was like I had blue skies for myself, creatively, especially. Right.
I love the again, like I know maybe I'm way behind, but I love how much focus you have on the visual element of this stuff. And I saw it at Lumberyard, and it just like fun. I mean, I'm always learning, and that's for me. So for me being older and kind of getting back into music, like I've also just like become way more open-minded and just more observant, less ego. And I was like, oh fuck, visuals. Okay, that makes a huge difference. Like these cool ass visuals. Like you're not awkwardly dancing with just like staring at a DJ and making weird eye contact, because that happens sometimes in a club when there's not much else to look at and the sound's all up front. And you're like,
right? I think more of it is like it's just more of a show, right?
Yeah, totally.
You can get people to come in the moment. I get this. I've run into people that say the same principle applies to basically any creative performance, anything, right? And it's called, I call it the woo button. They just call it woo factor, right? There's a bunch of different versions of it, but it's essentially some kind of control of the dynamics that grab someone's attention.
Yeah.
Anything that'll just get their attention back there, right? It's the same thing that happens when a DJ who maybe hasn't practiced a lot and they're playing a track that's a little down, they're letting that break last a little bit too long. Everybody starts looking for their friends, starts walking out of the thing. I mean, that's where you can engage both senses to pull everybody right back in. And that's immersion, right?
Yeah.
In the true sense of the word, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what immersion should mean to people, is like keeping them from thinking about other things.
Yeah.
And they're immersed, they're enjoying, they're stuck on it. And the woo button thing is when I say, okay, well, I've got 2 buttons that I always program whenever I program a thing. One of them brings everything down to almost nothing, and the other one starts it all back up again. And that's the woo button. And if you do it right on a drop, 9 times out of 10, the crowd goes woo. They can't help themselves. They're just like, oh, it's a drop, oh, it's a drop. And then the lights go flash, and they go, woo! It's just amazing. And that feeling's great, to have a button that you can push, and the crowd reacts to it. Just single button is awesome. And, you know, DJs get a lot of that feeling, too. They're like, boom, there's a drop, and the crowd goes woo. So this is just one more aspect that you can use to, like, create just an impression on a person, right? Something memorable, something that they're going to have a hell of a lot of fun with.
Yeah. And that's I feel like you just gave up an industry secret, but at the same time, I feel like people need to listen to this and like really think about that immersive experience, right? Versus just like, there's so much good music out there, and there's a lot of competent DJs, and actually the gear now makes DJs more competent anyway, because it's easier to use, right? And so that I do think there's still like maybe a missing component that maybe it's like going retro, but going back and really putting some focus on the visuals and thinking about that immersion.
Tying them together too, right? That makes sense. I mean, you get good VJs who are sitting there and they're music fans. They're listening to the music. They're timing their visual to happen to it. And then you've got ones that are just playing videos, right?
Yeah.
And flipping buttons and stuff. And you can tell the difference. It's really easy. Even a regular person who doesn't know anything about it, it's not necessarily tangible to them, but they'll be more engaged.
Yeah.
And you'll just see it. They'll just be like staring at the screen and dancing to the tunes and enjoying it. And you can see the difference even in a person who wouldn't know how to tell you why they enjoy it or not.
Yep.
You watch a regular person be like, I don't know, something about it just felt a little like low, so I went to the bathroom and then headed off. It's like they don't know why, but it happens.
That's so interesting. Now you just made me go back. My memory bank just popped up, but I went to Winter Music Conference several times, but back I think like 99. It was like 99. There was this drum and bass show. World of Drum and Bass, I think, is a crazy sound system. But what really did it is there were these, I want to say they were twins or sisters or something, like these German girls who had all these controls for and like levers and buttons, and they were doing the visuals, and it was so dope. Like it was, and that was, and I just haven't seen that much of that.
Right. I mean, early versions that we had some bits of performance art we would tie into the music, right? We have, like one of my favorite stories, we were playing our residency at the Matrix Coffee House, which I mentioned earlier, right?
Yeah.
There were points where we'd like put a little computer out and play Pong, and then we put the Pong sounds and replicate them into the speakers and add effects on them. So we literally call the song Pong because it's just the noises of someone playing Pong bouncing back and forth. And we had people actually just playing it in the front of the stage because it was hilarious. But one of them, we had a song called, what was it called? 00666946666, right? Just random numbers we thought sounded good that we put in the song. But it was like a 9-minute song because about 2 minutes in, we would tune down the beat and just keep it to the beat and make a little EQ slot in it. And we would prank call the venue we were at. And wherever we played that song, we would call into the same venue, wait for them to pick up, and just be like, I'd like to order a sandwich. Can you put a sandwich in my sandwich? And just see what they do. Like one of our members also did stand-up comedy, so we always let him do the calling because he was hilarious. But he would call and would prank them. It'd usually take him a couple minutes to figure out that they were on the stage being played back at the entire audience.
That is ridiculous.
It was just funny to see their moment. Everybody gets a kick out of it.
Yeah.
The whole audience is in on the joke.
Yeah.
Like, we see where you're calling, and they look over, and like the bartender's answering the phone.
God damn it.
It was hilarious. But doing those little bits of things like that, it makes a massive difference.
Yeah. No, that's very cool. And it's that attention to detail. It's that artistic effort, right? And again, I don't feel like maybe people are shy about it. I don't know. What's the theory? Is it people gotten lazy? People just don't know they can push those boundaries a little bit? What do you think it is?
I think it's a combination of that stuff,
Okay.
right? Like some people, they get comfortable, right?
Yeah.
They want to do a thing, they get a thing out of it, that's it.
Yeah.
They don't want to iterate, they don't want to change it, they want to just get the thing that they know how to get out of it. They don't want to drive that, right? It's not that ambition to create that some folks have. And then other times it's cost, budget, time, right? All the things that everyone's short on, right? I like to call myself a pragmatic futurist because I like to sit in on panels when I do tech talks, right? And I'm the guy who's sitting there making fun of all the futurist people because they're like, "Whoa, this tech can do this and that," and I'm like, "Yeah, but it doesn't exist and it won't for 30 years."
Yeah.
Like, I love doing that, just like stamping on their parade, just like
Sure.
Be realistic. This isn't a sci-fi convention, but I think it's a lot of that happens where people are, I just want to hit this mark. This is what I need to do. I need this many people in. I need this amount of budget. I need to have this much left over. So these are the things that I'm going to cut. And visuals just haven't made themselves a mandatory ad yet. I think that's coming. For sure. As someone who runs visuals now at venues and regularly see packed out shows around Seattle and then talk to other folks who are like, man, we can't get people in the door. I'm like, there's probably a reason for that. Like, gotta do something different, right? It's like the world's moving and a lot of the younger people, they like that stuff. They love it. Like, I mean, it's the flash, the big, the immersion, the doing that little bit extra something different. Like, it's not just a destination. It's not just an artist. Like, seeing just a person playing anymore is not enough. Yeah. Right? You see some shows where people will not stop talking about them. Like, I don't know if you caught the Justice show.
I didn't.
Their lights are incredible.
That's very cool.
Very good. It's just amazing. I mean, it was good enough that at the end of the show there was a standing ovation for the lighting guys on the stage. So cool. Like, they put the spotlights on them. The whole audience is like, hell yeah. Yeah. Because they were rad. I had a spot when I was at the Justice show because I'm such a nerd about this stuff. I'm like behind the lighting guy, like watching him do his thing on the grandma system. I'm like, yeah, that guy's good.
Well, oh, really?
Like, oh, yeah. I could still see Justice. This was that guy I wanted to watch because that's what everyone's paying attention to is the lighting system.
I'm like thinking, okay, the things that separated like a good show for a great show for me, and I think it was very subconscious. And as I'm listening to this, I'm like, God, I think the lighting and the visuals played a huge element. Mm-hmm. And I just consciously, though, it's not front of mind.
You don't think about it, right? I mean, there's some things that have gotten away with in the past. Like, I saw Placebo play, and I was a minor fan when I first saw Placebo. If you know them, I hated Placebo when they first came out. I was like, oh, his voice sounds whiny and nasally. And then 2 years later, I'm like, oh, shit, that's what I sound like. But and I'm like, okay, that's not bad. And then I saw him live, and I'm like, that dude's voice is amazing. Yeah. Brian Milko can sing, and he wings it all the time. He's just making it all up as he goes.
Is that right?
Fabulous. No lighting needed. Just watching those three people perform, freaking amazing. But then you see something that's like just takes that another level. Like, and I love bringing up Infected Mushroom as a point because they just psytrance. But they're always putting on a show. Like, the guys up there playing the keyboard lines live, and they're building giant mushroom statues with big mechanical mouths and lights all over the place. Like, that's where it's going. Like, that's what makes a difference. There's the shows that are epic that people talk about are the ones like Pink Floyd, where they had the giant inflatable pig, right? Or Muse, where they had the drones flying around the audience, like pointing lights at the clouds and stuff, and the big smoke machines. And everything. Like, that kind of stuff just blows people's minds.
So I have a good friend that went on tour with Bright Eyes. You know, the kind of the indie pop, and they came to Seattle, and she got us tickets. She plays flute and keys. She's a brilliant musician. Lives in New York. And I remember that show now because the dude, the lighting visual guy, he had an old overhead projector. Mm-hmm. He had these chipped black nails, and he was like pouring crazy shit on the overhead projector and moving things. And it was so good, though. It was like huge. But you look back and it's like this dude working with an old overhead projector you had in elementary school.
You can still see people doing that stuff at like
it's fantastic.
Lights.
Yeah.
A couple guys that go down there and just do that for fun now, right? The old school lighting method. There's a company in Oregon that makes analog visual gear.
Okay.
They're like synthesizers, but they create visuals. They just use like feedback processes and stuff. And I'm like, I used to do that. I had an old like Alesis mixer that I would like plug my VCR outputs into. And that was when the TV plugs were still the RCA plug. You could just plug it straight into the mixer, and then you could mix different VHSs together. And it was glitchy as hell, right? It just looked weird, but it was glitchy as hell. Like, people buy filters that do that now. No, I was like, I could just do that with a mixer and a couple VHS tapes.
So
like,
funny.
Mixing Baraka and like, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like, no one knew what was going on, but it just looked wild and trippy. And then you just throw that up on a screen. People thought it was great.
I love it. And then you guys, we didn't talk about that. I know you've done a lot of collabs with local folks on the music side, but I mean, it was great. I didn't know that. Sam Hipp, Snapdragon, Mark Hardy, Zoff, Pesner, Jordan Strong, Madeline. Yep. Blue Tech, and it sounds like there's more than that. Like, how'd you hook up with all those folks?
I just, a lot of talking to people, right?
Okay.
I just love talking music. I love talking creative.
Yeah.
I'm big in the inspiration. I love working with folks. I'm also like, I'm pretty malleable, right? I don't have a process. I don't have a hard and fast process. I mean, it's like, I'll write a song however the hell I want, however the hell someone else wants, like whatever. I like to change it up. So working with someone's really easy because I'm like, what's your process? Let's just use your process. Right, I'll do it on my computer. I also drive pretty fast. Yeah. I use a DAW that not a lot of other people use. So I'm fine. I use FL Studio.
Okay.
Which, Skrillex uses it, or not anymore, but he used to. He's able to now.
Yeah, that's.
But I love it. But these days, like a DAW, that's not one DAW to rule them all. They're all basically the same. Yeah. It's just what user interface you like better.
Yep.
Right? That's about it.
How well you can navigate it.
Yeah, and FL Studio for me is just fast.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with it. I love how things hook up. It just makes sense in my mind. So it's really fast for me to work with. So when I work with people, it's just like, hey, let's just do it. Whatever makes sense for you, your place, my place. We'll make it easy.
Nice.
I can give you a bunch of stems, and I've been told, I believe this myself, but also have had confirmation that when I write a track, it's crazy interesting, and there's lots of stuff in there. So when I give someone a track, I'm like, here's 38 stems, and they're like, all right. I guess a massive amount of stems for them to work with, and they can always find something to identify with. And
right.
Get a little bit of, inspiration there, which is what I really like with it. So getting to work with all these people has been a lot of that. I'm like, hey, I got this track. Do you like it? If not, great. Here's another one. Do you want to do a remix? Here's some stems. Play with it. And people are very willing to do that kind of stuff. So
no shortage of ideas. You're not hitting that writer's block.
No, definitely
you don't seem
not.
like the type.
I think it's like, it's pretty funny. I had some old tracks that I wrote in like 96, something like that. I wrote them while I was in Germany.
Yeah.
And I was like really proud of them, and I was going to release them at some point. I was going to sell them on mp3.com, if you remember that.
I do.
Yeah, you could like host your own thing and sell it, stuff like that. So I had these. I started putting them on an online service. They're getting ready, and then I go back on there at one point, and I go to mp3.com, and some dude had my tracks and was releasing them.
Oh,
some
boy.
dude in Colombia. I'm like, what? So I like sent him a message. I'm like, what the hell? He's like, immediately just took him down and vanished. I didn't even know who the hell he was. I was like, okay, whatever. But it just occurred to me at that point, because I felt real hurt, right? Like someone stole my stuff. I've lost it forever. It's not under my control anymore. I've lost these tunes and whatnot. And then I'm like, I just write more. Yeah. Like, I don't care. It's fine. Yeah. Like, I just do another one. Do another one. Do another one. Like, the creative process is half of it, right? Yeah. Like, I don't need to feel precious or... I guess what is the thing materialistic about the tracks I've done. Right. Like, I'll just go do another one. That's fine. That's part of the process. And that's where I think a lot of this one a day stuff is like good for people, right?
Right.
You do the one a day, anything that gets you to do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it's just I do it because I love it. It gives me catharsis. It's a real great break from things, and I'm ADHD as hell, so that's like a hyper focus point for me. It's one time when I don't feel like I'm getting distracted by anything else, so it feels good.
You just dialed in.
I just dial right into it. And I can just, and sometimes it'll be like I'll spend a month on one track and then be like, this is crap, I hate it, and just never do anything with it. And then sometimes it'll be like a day and a track's done. Right. I think I think it was my second release on Global Dance Records was Spacewall Gardens. Was actually not the original track for that EP. It was actually the second track that's on there. That's on that EP was the main track. And then at some point, I'm like, this line doesn't fit. And I pulled it out, and I started it up. And 2 days later, Spacewall Gardens was done. Like, just done. Just, bam, finished. And just worked. And I was like, this is now the title track. Absolutely. The other one spent so much time on it. It's like, don't even be precious about it, though. It's like you can't measure it in that way, right? Sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get there, sometimes you don't. You just keep doing it, and that's the point.
No, precious is a good word, and I think it
Precious.
But you didn't really say it, but I'm going to say it. I think the people that maybe they're either self-conscious about their output, or they just lack that. They're just not prolific, right?
Right.
They do get precious about what they create, whether it's a fucking DJ mix or a single or whatever, and it's just, you may get lucky. You may make that track that gets played, by one of the top 100s, and you spent all this time on, and you're precious about it, but probably not. Probably you're better off just doing one a day and just knocking it out.
Why set your expectations?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's nice to work for it. Work for it.
Yeah.
By all means, hope for it. Try for it. Shoot for it. But don't expect it because it's not owed.
Yeah.
That's just not how it works. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I've always considered myself prolific. I've got so many tracks that I've never released. But I was definitely also the person who was like, it's not ready. It's not done. I hate it. It's terrible. I'm very self-critical about it. I think most of artists are, really, at some point. If you're not, you're probably not looking hard enough. But so many of those tracks that I just never released because it was the same thing. I don't think it's good enough. It doesn't sound like everybody else. It doesn't quite hit that thing right. Now, I had even my girlfriend. She's just looking at some of my tracks from like '98.
Yeah.
She's like, "This sounds fresh. Like someone wrote it yesterday."
Wild.
And I'm like, "You're actually kind of right. That's not that far out. Why am I not releasing this? Because I thought it was too old. Right?
Yeah.
I just thought it didn't sound right, or it didn't do the right thing. And then I'm like, hang on a minute. And then I put on like a garage mix, and I'm like, people are trying to make it sound like they wrote it in the 90s.
Right.
Like trying to make it sound like that. I'm like, I just got these old outputs from a computer, and it's already got the 8-bit sound in it.
Yep.
Like, just add a better bass drum, and it's good. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Flesh out the dynamics.
Well, and it's good you were organized enough to keep that shit, right? Or to keep most of it, right?
That's my diary.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Like, I do not keep a diary. I don't keep a journal. I don't have a good photo book. I don't have an album. But I have, like, a cataloged by date record of music I've written since 91.
And that sort of, those tie into different parts and places in your life and different events, good, bad,
Yeah, and I think that's my own, like, personal synesthesia, right? I memories for me are triggered by sound and music. So I can pull up a track and be like, man, that's how I felt when I was 22. If I do that without music, I'm like,
yeah.
Maybe I was 30, maybe I was 20, I don't know. Can't even remember. It's all a blur. But then the music's like, boom, and I'm right back there.
Wow.
So it makes a massive difference. That's like how important it just becomes in your life, right? Got another one, like visuals started to take that place for me too, so I married them together. I got this principle I tell people, right? If you want to remember what decade something happened in, try and remember what color the streetlights were. Because we had epic changes of streetlights.
You're
like
fucking
almost
right.
every decade.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, well, if it happened in the 80s, you had those like crappy cafeteria blue lights in all the street lights, right? If it happened in the 90s, you had those horrible orange ones that were just like really bright, really wide. They're all over. Right in the 2000s, you started to get the daylight color, right? But they're still halogens. And now the new ones are all LEDs. They're all those ultra bright LEDs. They're around 4900 to 5100. Like, you can remember it. You're like, all right, well, what decade was that? I'll just remember what color the streetlights were. And I'm like, bam, memory comes back.
God damn it. I've never paid attention, but now that you bring it up, now I'm going to get lost in my recollection of streetlights.
So that's why I took a trip to South America like last year.
No shit.
And all the lights, I was like, man, it feels like the 90s. Why is that? And I'm like, oh, the streetlights
lights
are all orange. Those orange streetlights.
That's so
It's
wild.
the same thing. I was in Japan. I got that same thing. I'm like, wow, these are all those like old LEDs. Like they're about 15, 20 years behind on their light replacements.
I love the streetlight reference point. That is so cool. I'm going to have to start paying attention. Well,
any abstract that helps you with nostalgia, right? That's how the ADHD brain functions sometimes.
I think I got a little bit of that going on too.
Find a mnemonic and latch onto it, because then the brain works really well.
Yeah, and then I was thinking about this too as you're talking, because you're this weird sort of opposite ends of the spectrum of like somebody who's a highly fast prolific processor on your own, but you're also very into collaboration, right? Like I can tell you feed off collaboration. And then I know you're sort of tied into the Burning Man scene, which again is full of all sorts of, neurodivergence and regular folks and personality types. Like, talk to me a little bit about like how you fell into the Burning Man scene and what you do there. Well,
so I started being really interested in the early 2000s. Right?
Okay.
I was playing a lot of electronic shows. You can't avoid the burners every once in a while, and they show up, and you're like, man. And they literally are like, CrossFitters in that way, and vegans. Yeah, I saw that. I saw a meme Venn diagram a little while ago, right? That was like CrossFitters, vegans, and people who go to Burning Man, and then there's little centerpieces like people who talk too much, like right in the center there. Totally. I'm like, I was like, no, that's no. And like a lot of my friends are burners. I'm like, I love the culture, I love the idea, I love the art stuff. Right. I just can't do this with them. It's too much. I don't want it. And I started getting a little better about it, so relaxed a little bit about it. And I played a lot of like local shows even back in the early 2000s. You said Trans Community all went to Burning Man, right? Yep. So it was very, very closely tied. Went to a ton of burning events. And then I finally went for the first time like 2014. And that was wild because it is not, you can't really describe it until you go there, which is why people talk about it so much. You get there and then day 3 you're like, I hate myself, I hate life, I've done everything wrong and I'm dehydrated and dying. And then day 4 you're like, party, because everything's fine again. You just like, it just breaks you to the bottom and then you like build yourself back up. And like that's why so many people come back and they're like, I've changed my life experience. I'm like, it literally just does that, kind of like a juice cleanse for your diet, right? Like juice cleanses don't work because juice is good for you. They work because they make you feel so bad that when you stop juice cleansing you feel wonderful, right? I think that's what that's the Count of Monte Cristo what was it, like the thing that they do, like Dumas wrote about that, right? It's like you gotta feed a man in prison a luxury meal once a month so they know what they're missing every other day.
Interesting.
Right? And that's that same principle, right? You just gotta know what rock bottom is or you don't enjoy the stuff you got anyways. And Burning Man's really good at just doing that for people. Yeah. Right? So many people have that like massive connection to it. So I went out, had my experience, I'm like, okay, I get it. Yeah, I was not getting it until then. And then the first thing I wanted to do was like, art cars are my favorite. I'm going to do art cars. So next year I built an art car, started up a theme camp, built a giant art piece. We had a like central audio reactive LED structure with like hand controlled knobs in the chairs and people would control custom music that we built to it. I built an art car with a 15-foot trailer that broke on day 2. It's like art cars are the hardest thing you can do out there, and they are life-sucking. Like it just takes everything to get them done, and like tons of money and tons of work. And I've done 3 of them now, and I don't want to do another one, but I still love them. Like I love playing on them. I love being on them. I love the idea of it.
You just don't want to own it anymore.
I just don't want to do it anymore.
Is it super rewarding though when the art car goes off? Like, or not? Or is it just the project and the end result's not as big a deal as the process?
No, the end result is fabulous, right? I mean, that's the part of it that I think is the best because you got that instant community that you can pull around with it, right? Now I've got all my friends. I've got a place for them to come. We've got a place to listen to music. We can move to other things around this giant thing that is Burning Man. I'll take my whole art piece with me so people can enjoy it over there. And we can play music over there. We don't have to be stuck at the stage playing music or stuck showing our art at this one place. Like we move it around. Like it's awesome. The one I built would turn itself into a stage. So it was this trailer. It had the big wings on it. We'd tow it out somewhere, park it, put up the brakes, and then open the wings, and then the speakers were on the very end. So we had this big surround stage, and then we do karaoke on the stage of this trailer bed. It was super cool. And then it broke, and then it turned into an art stage.
Got it. You sort of left it where it broke.
Sort of left it back at camp. And it looked super cool. It had an eyeball on it that would like look at people and make squishy sounds when it did.
But it was karaoke. It wasn't necessarily a DJ thing. It was like
it was both. Okay, we did both. Yeah, we absolutely did both. Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, I DJ'd. Some people did karaoke.
Nice.
This is a mix of stuff, right? But we also did like the Neon Vice with giant 80s synthwave art bus, right? Like so Sylvan, it was his project. He's like he needed a bosun, right? Which I'm a PM person, so I'm like, all right, I'll come in and whip crack people and do some organization stuff. So we made that work. We did all that stuff, and now it's sold and it's become it's become a mobile home for a couple of trans youths, which is just an awesome story.
Is that right?
Yeah, they've got this 80s synthwave car they're driving around somewhere. So it's just super cool what's happened to it. But it was quite the project. And, I still love what Burning Man is and does. And, one of my favorite examples is if, like, you haven't been there, always just, like, if you don't like something, you just turn around. There's something else. Yeah. Right? You go to buy ice. Two things you can buy there, ice and coffee, right?
Right.
I go to buy ice one day, and they're doing, like, yoga in front of the ice thing, right? And I'm not a big yoga person. Like, yoga makes me fall asleep. And there's doing yoga. You're buying your ice. Everybody's like doing yoga while they wait in line and everything. They're playing this like woo hippie music, and nothing against it, but I love woo hippie. It just sounds funny. And they're all relaxed and stuff. I'm like, okay, great. Buy my ice, go away. Next day I go back to get ice, and camps have to volunteer to run the ice machine. So the second group that's out there is actually Death Guild, which if you know Death Guild, they run the dome there. What's it called? The Thunderdome.
Okay.
Yeah, where people are fighting each other.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, so they're running the ice machine, and there's literally like full black leather goth chains, machines thing. There's dancing on the tables and like, this is the way to fuck God. Like singing on the things. I'm like, that is not the ice machine place that I was at yesterday. It's completely different. And I think a lot of folks who imagine Burning Man, they don't imagine stuff like that.
Right.
That's what makes it different.
Yeah.
Right? And the other stuff, there's no rhyme or reason to the crap that goes on.
Right.
So, just that creative vomit.
Yeah.
It's just like, bleh. Hang on, let me pick up some pieces in here that are interesting.
Yeah, and so rather than it sounds like rather than like judging it and being like, I don't like it, you just turn around, go find something else.
Turn around to something else. I mean, people are just doing things.
Yeah,
and that's what's
cool,
crazy
weird.
About
I'm gonna
it,
go
right?
over here.
Oh crap! There's an Irish wedding.
Yeah.
Right? Sweet. What does that mean? Well, they're just doing shots of whiskey, and someone got married. Now someone else is getting married. Like, I don't know what's going on.
That's amazing. Yeah, I will get there at some point. We always get comments like, yeah, Phil, you need to go to Burning Man. Just quit talking about it. But it will happen.
Yeah.
It will happen.
I mean, it's one of those things where you got to at least go to know.
Yeah.
But it's really hard. And then, you'll always run into someone who's like, oh, it's better back in the day. I'm like, yeah, it was better next year.
About everything, right?
That's like a burner statement. It was better next year.
Yeah.
Right? Which just means it's like looking forward, man. It's like it doesn't matter what it was last year. It's going to be different.
It's
definitely different than it was. I'm not going to tell anyone it's the same, but I also am not going to tell anyone it's bad. It's just different.
So what are you working on now? I know you're playing, I think coming up you're playing Opulent Temple, right?
Yep. I got a set on the deck at Opulent Temple, which I've played for the Opulent Temple folks before. I played in a loft at a fundraiser. I played in one of their VR setups as well. I've done stuff with them out at the Burn, like set up VR and things there, and like the folks who run it are old friends, right? Connie and
are you going to do visuals too, or are you just or
we're building a stage for the big room, right?
I'm gonna have to go.
We're still dialing in exactly how big it's going to be. Okay. But I know, they wanted to do something crazy with it. And I love Chris. Chris is great, dude. Yeah. I like him a lot. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's just going to be so much fun. And, getting to deck that space out and do all kinds of creative things with that big room is just awesome. We'll take out all our projectors and whatnot. And we're doing all our own custom content. And that kind of ties into a lot of the other stuff we do, right? We've got the monthly, right? We did at the Lumberyard. That's second Saturdays. We're going to keep doing that one. We're thinking about bringing back some Future Function. So Evan and I have been talking about it. We both kind of play similar type of synthy stuff sometimes. Cool. And we think that'd be a good place to house it again, right? Kind of move away a little bit from the synthwave term, because I think that gets associated with like old white guys who've lost their hearing.
Or like Stranger Things, the soundtrack.
Right. It's all kind of been like co-opted. So the people who like synthwave really just don't go to shows anymore. They don't want to dance. They don't want to do that stuff. That's a different thing. Yeah. They're going to go to like, Dance with the Dead show. Right. Which if you saw that at Numos, did you see that they posted for Dance with the Dead? No, I just mention this to folks because it's hilarious as heck. They keep tagging Dead Can Dance. Oh. If you know the 80s goth group.
For sure,
right?
for sure.
Yeah. They keep tagging Dead Can Dance and being like, this group, Dead Can Dance, coming to Numos. I'm like, that's hilarious. Because it's a picture of Dance with the Dead. They're like, they are so different.
Totally.
It's really funny that they've made the mistake more than once, which is pretty funny. Yeah. But, I think that we're doing a lot of those. We're trying to bring back Future Function. There's a number of really cool venues coming up that we want to work with. We want to do lighting for. We're doing lighting as well for a number of different spaces. I've got some pitches that are out there. With Triangularis, which is like kind of Evan and I, and we got a couple other people working with us on it. We want to do installations more.
Yeah.
We like doing nightlife stuff. We
Sure.
like doing music organization stuff, but it is still kind of a slog, especially when you do a festival, right?
Right.
You build a thing, it's amazing, then you tear it down and you never see it again. I want to do some installations. I want to see some of this stuff that we can build and spend our time dialing it in right? Like a lot of things, it's always down to the time, down to the budget. Like, oh, 2 hours to set up. Like, do it now. Like, okay, I want like a day to map something. That'd be great.
Yeah.
And the interactive pieces, like I worked in VR for like 7 years. So I have a lot of knowledge on like immersion and how the technology works. And then Evan's been doing digital content and audio and interaction. Like, we've got the skill set to do some crazy stuff. We've even built a few tests for it, and we've got some projects that we've been working with Triangularis that are going to be amazing when you see them, right? And there's a few companies that are doing this kind of thing. We feel like we're in the right spot for it, and it's coming up just with the right positioning, because we want to build stuff that like leaves a lasting impression, right? It's not just take my selfie, go home. Like, we want something that's going to be that also. We don't not want it to be that, but at some point someone's going to walk in there and come out and just be like, oh, I did not think about that. Like, we want some high art moments in there where people are mind blown. So we've got designs. We've got like 23 different designs we've set up. We've got a few companies we're working with to build these and to fund them. It just takes a long time to get that cycle going, right? But there's other companies doing that around Seattle. We're talking with them, trying to get the right amount of partnership, because I mean, it's not the biggest industry for who's providing it, but it's a huge opportunity industry, because there's a lot of people that want that stuff. They want more things to do, things to go out, things that aren't the same thing that they do every time, right? How do you make it more interesting? So you see it when someone throws up a flashy LED thing in a random room and people flock to it so they can see something different, right? Oh, that's where we're headed with it.
I mean, even me, you heard me say, like, as I start to think back on my history of going to shows, it was a subconscious awareness of this thing that happened. And I think you're right. I think there's a huge opportunity, especially for people like you who are driven to go do it, and you have the skill set, and you have the understanding, and you have the experience. Like, fuck yeah, we need more people like you doing more projects like that, right?
I feel fortunate that I got 20 years in tech to back my my projects up. Like, I can write a contract, I can do a P&L, like, I know how to do all that stuff too. So let's make this real. As Evan and I are, focused on it and doing the whole business bit of it, and just trying to get those ones that make sense in there, and doing a few tests in the meantime. So, hosting our own night is just a piece of the pie. Yeah. We're just got this whole baking project, I guess, we're trying to put together.
I love it. And I love it that we're talking over here, and then you're going to do a DJ set here in my little studio, which is amazing. Like, you have so much breadth and depth, which is why I wanted to bring you in. And also what I loved about not knowing you, like, it's been a total like pleasure just to get to know you and get inspired and understand like
I appreciate you having me out. It's awesome to get around and start doing stuff, because you get too wrapped up in stuff. You gotta chill it out and do some other stuff every once in a while, right? You can't do the same thing all the time.
No,
at least I can't, anyways.
No, I think novel. I was just reading it. And always novelty is like one of the keys to finding flow, right? And I think we're all, especially the ADHD brains, we're always looking for that flow state and trying to figure out what plugs us in and what. And then we do it over and over again, and then it starts to not be novel anymore, which is the perpetual cycle of like always looking for the next thing.
Totally. I mean, I got a couple principles that I like to live by in that thing, right? It's like, as soon as I get to a point where something feels like it's hard, that's when I need to do it. That's when I need to learn how to do it. Because if you're not doing that you can get Alzheimer's doing that.
Totally.
That's what happens. Your brain starts to get tired. It gets like, and I totally feel it. Like, I feel like I'm getting old. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that's just too much effort. I don't want to do it. And then
that's the indicator.
That means I need to do it. That means I need to go do it now. Like, it's important and imperative. And then the other one is that if something doesn't make sense to me that the kids are doing, I've got the wrong mentor. Like, I got to go out and find another mentor that's like 10, 20 years younger than me and be like, you're the sensei. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, tell me what makes this special for you, right? I'll go to some of the raves that the younger kids are doing, and I know I get the urge. Like, I'm absolutely like, damn kids having a rave under the bridge. But I'm like, there was a hell of a lot of people under the bridge. Yeah. Like, they did something right. They probably did some things wrong, but so did I when I was their age. Like, I don't need to be crotchety about it. I want to go ask, what the heck are you doing? Yeah. Can I help? Yeah. Can I help make what you're doing good and better? It's like working with those kind of people.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we need to do. And I think finding that like whole mental flip of like learning from someone much younger than you, that helps so much.
Well, just being a lifelong learner in general, and also having that humility to be willing to say, look, dude, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Explain it to me.
Teacher, right?
Like, I'm a 12-year-old. Like, explain it to me. Let's go.
I mean, even more points to them if they have the patience to work with you on it, right? They're like, yeah, I'll give this old guy some time. Like,
he's weird. He's old, but
I appreciate that too. Right. I feel like I have done that when I was younger, but I probably also could have done it more. So I'm like, that takes a special person anyways. So,
well, I want to get you on the decks, but if just give you an opportunity, by no means do you have to give any shout outs. I think we talked about your upcoming shows, New Year's, Lumberyard. Any other releases coming out? I know you've got that full album release that you just dropped, right? Yeah.
So I mean, the whole working with people principle too is like I want to point out the one with the Munchies After Dark release, right?
Yeah.
So we had the Tony H and Tony was at one of my shows and he heard a few tracks and I'm like, oh, we're releasing this one. And he's like, okay, yeah, cool. Send it to me later. Send it to me later. He's like, hell yeah, this one. Let's do it. And I'm like, cool. And I go look out for a remix of it. And I found one person. I found two person. I'm like, hey, Tony, what about another person? What about a Breaks remix of that? Okay. He's like, yeah, cool. What about this other third person? They want to do one too. I'm just talking to all these people.
Right.
Dude, sure enough, before I know, I've got like 8 tracks planned out for this EP.
Awesome.
And they're all remixes of the same track. And like everybody wanted to work with it. So it just became a whole pile on. And I'm like,
that's killer.
It actually got flagged as an album on the release.
Did it really?
Just because it had so many tracks and playtime on the EP. It wasn't really an EP at all. It was just like a remix album.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff, I love that. Like anytime I can have this track and I put it out, I get all these people coming back to it. I rarely have less than like 3 people at least on an EP doing remixes for it, and that's rad. So I just had this album come out on the 12th, which thanks so much to Chris for believing in me on it. I was sitting in Hawaii in December last year, and I like calling her, and I'm like, what if I release this like IDM album of like a collection of tracks I've done over the years that I've remixed together into what makes to me like logical sense. It's just like, yes, let's do that.
Nice.
Like, cool. 3 months. A year later, it finally comes out. So
that's great.
It took a little while to get it nailed down, pick the right ones. I swapped a few tracks in and out to get it right, but having that come out definitely feels amazing.
Nice.
The support's been great for it so far. Yep. If you haven't checked it out, I'm still pushing the Beatport sales to people. So, thanks to anyone who's picking it up. That helps keep it up in the charts there and just helps it with Beatport. When the Beatport, sheen and flash dies off, then we'll move into the Spotify stuff. But right now, that's the best place to get it. And then following that, I've got, for that one planned, a remix album for the same thing. So working with all these people I've worked with before and trying to get them to, do more about it is... we'll get them doing remixes of each of those tracks on there. So I've already got a good list of people that I won't confirm until they finish the remixes. But, some people I've worked with, some people I haven't worked with, doing remix of each of those tracks and just release a whole remix album along with it. And so that's the plan there. Got another one kind of in the pipe for Uniting Souls. And then we've got another one coming for a fundraiser album that's coming out here soon. And then, Evan and I have even been talking about what we're going to do with some of the future function stuff, right? Like that's another place where it's like the synthwave style stuff is it's there, but it's not really released as regularly, right? People will be like, oh, here's my B-side or here's my extra little one, but I'm like, there's a lot of it out there and there's not really a label home for it. So that might be a good place for us to put some of that stuff out, retro-y, synthy, acidy, but still modern and danceable and club-worthy. Like we really want to put some of that stuff out, so we might actually start down that road a little bit,
I love it, man. It sounds like you got a full plate and a lot going on.
I got too many plates.
That's awesome.
I'm the guy at the buffet walking back with 3 plates. Like, what am I going to do with this?
You're going to get kicked out.
Probably.
No.
I haven't been kicked out of a buffet yet, though.
No.
It's a...
Yeah, man.
I haven't had my succulent Chinese meal yet. So.
There you go. Well, it's great to have you in here. Thanks for spending time with us. And
happy to be here.
Man, I'm so glad we got to connect.
Definitely.
So cool.
Definitely.
And I'm excited to hear what you're going to play. Let's cut you loose on that.
Sweet.
Seattle House Mafia.